on the Table, where we start conversations around the table, giving you an opportunity to create your own once you leave this podcast. And so if this podcast helps you, why don't you like it, share it, and maybe share it with a friend and see what transpires. It could create some great conversation. And today I have my son, Corey Gibson, with me, and we're going to kind of flip the script today. Instead of me doing the interviewing, he's going to walk through and ask me some questions. And so, Corey, thanks for doing this, and thank you for being a part of the day, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to be here and just to talk and chat with you. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. So what are we talking about?
We're talking about you.
Oh, Lord.
That's what we're tackling today.
That'll be a short subject.
Hopefully not. But yeah, we're talking about you, kind of your story, your beginnings, where you're at, and some lessons you've learned along the way. And I think we're going to just start from the beginning, right? Every great story starts. Just kind of your family, where you grew up, anything like that.
All right. I was very fortunate because I grew up in a very small community, a small town where everyone knows you. They know your parents. And that has its benefits. It also had its challenges in my teenage years because I couldn't do anything and get away with it. But it was a great place to grow up, great place to live. I was in Sweeney, Texas, and so just really incredible. Mom, Dad, both of them love me greatly, and my brother, my sister. And so it grew up out in the country on 5.5 acres that was backed up against an old dairy farm that had been shut down soon after we moved out there. And so it had thousands of acres that were just open, and we had access to and ran all over the place, rode my motorcycles all over the place.
Nice.
And so, just kind of did that, and just a great childhood, great school. It was really wonderful. It was good.
Sounds like you probably have a lot of stories. A lot of acres means a lot of stories, right?
A lot of acres does mean a lot of stories. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. And so, stories of hunting, stories of getting in trouble, stories of, we had a place right behind the house. It's a couple miles down the road to get to, but I don't know who developed it. I don't know who did it, but they created a motocross track. And so, we who had motorcycles would go out there and ride, or if you didn't own a motorcycle, you borrowed one because, or you went with some friends and you just raced on that track. And it was a blast. A lot of high jump, sharp curves. Yeah. I mean, you really thought you were either on motocross or Evel Knievel, and sometimes a little of both. And so it was wonderful. I had a gun put in my hand before I was 7 years old. My dad had me in the woods hunting. Yeah. I say hunting. I was shooting a Daisy BB gun. I don't know that it would break skin, but I had and so that's just kind of the way I grew up. Yeah. And we had all kinds of, chickens, pigeons, pigs, rabbits, dogs,
The works.
The Green Acres type farm life.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was good.
How about first job? When you're starting your career, what was the first job in the line?
I don't know about it much of a career, but I was 13 years old. And speaking of all those animals a moment ago, we go into town to buy food for these animals at the feed store. And the lady who owns the feed store is the one who's carrying out the feed. And I'm like, well, what happened to the guy that was working for you? And she goes, well, he quit. And I'm like, well, will you hire me? And which, I don't know if she was supposed to or not, but she did. And so
13.
I looked at my dad and said, she asked me, she said, when can you start? I said, I'll start today if Dad will come back and pick me up. And so I went and talked to my dad. And so I started working after school and weekends by the time I was 13.
Wow.
And so I was making a whopping $2.35 an hour. Woo, we were living the big life.
Man, that was big back in the day, right?
It was. And so, but I really enjoyed that job. I enjoyed meeting people, getting to talk to people. It really helped me get out of any shell I had.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a good employee. I didn't know what I was doing at all.
13-year-old employee. I don't think anyone expected you to be good.
I think the expectations were really, really low.
Yeah.
The bar was low. Get the food from here to there without busting too many bags.
Yeah.
And, it's a win.
That's awesome. It's cool that you got your first job by meeting a need.
Yeah.
That's so cool that like you just happened upon an opportunity and you're like, I'm down.
I'm here.
I'll take $2.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the funny thing was, though, is I got the job because my dad gave my mom X amount of money for, my mom was a stay-at-home mom most of the time, until my late teenage years. But he gave her X amount of money for kids' clothes.
Okay.
And so that means I couldn't afford to buy the clothes I wanted to wear.
Mm.
But when I started making $2.35 an hour and you go in, you price a shirt, you start counting how many Saturdays it's going to take to be able to buy that shirt or those jeans. And you realize, you know what? What mom's buying looks good.
I don't need that shirt. That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
And so it taught me value of hard work. It taught me value of money.
Yeah. How about especially hunting at 7, working at 13? That's so funny. It's like child labor laws. CPS getting called. Country hits different. I like that.
It does, man. I love small town country. It helped me.
How about some potential setbacks from that time? Or even before we get there, maybe some other lessons that you might have learned working at such an early age, or maybe sort of like expectations you've learned from that, or like put towards others, or
man, this could be vast and wide, to be honest.
There's a lot.
With you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. There's just a lot of things when you start working that young, you get to learn a lot of things fast. So, but I've always identified with people older than me than I did people my own age. Conversations that they were having.
They didn't have full-time jobs.
They didn't interest me either, but other people's conversations did. So it put me in an environment with, older people all the time. And I could hear them and glean from them and talk to them about, their farms, whether small or large, their needs. And it really positioned me well to learn things I may not have learned if I had not taken, that job or that opportunity. Just like, I was telling you, I had a gun in my hand by the time I was 7, which is true. But I wasn't unsupervised. My dad was there. He was helping me. He was showing me. He taught me that guns aren't the problem, people are. And it's people who don't pay attention or people who have ill will in their heart. And so I just learned all those things very early, because we lived in the country. For sure. And you could. Yeah. And it was wonderful.
Yeah. You're saying mom and dad, but for me, it's Nana and Papa.
Yeah.
But I remember even as a kid, like we're throwing the football in the yard at home. But when we go to Nana and Papa's, suddenly we're all on 4-wheelers. Suddenly you and Uncle Stacy are shooting shotguns in the yard. And I'm just like, what is happening? What world did I step into? Yeah. Who's this guy I call dad? What is going on? Yeah, I kind of stepped back in time when I get to go over there. And so it was just so fun. Getting to grow up out in the country gave yourself a lot of latitude, a lot of freedom, And then when I was 5, we went to the church I ended up growing up in. And so it was small church, wonderful little church. Met my best friend. He was 4. He greeted me at the door that morning with his dad. That's good. And so it was absolutely phenomenal. And so I got saved or gave my life to Christ at 7.
and was filled with the baptism of the Holy Spirit at 11. And so those were very, very significant times. I could tell you the message that Vernon Troutman taught when I was 7 years old that led me to Christ. And then my experience when I was 11, being filled with the Holy Spirit was extremely unusual.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah. Anyway, it was really just pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know.
Well, that was first job, but it might not have been the first job, say, in a career. Can you talk about maybe your first, like, career job or step into ministry and what that looked like and what got you to that point?
Yeah, I went to Bible school. I knew God. I was a call of God on my life. God spoke to me that He was calling me in the ministry when I was 17 years old. I'd actually just been diagnosed with an incurable disease, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But and back then they didn't know much about this disease at all. But then I had an encounter with the Lord that was absolutely crazy. I had a dream, and in my dream, I was in a military line, like getting inspected, okay? I was dressed in a green T-shirt, green shorts, looked like I was headed to boot camp, kind of. And I'm there with a bunch of other people. I can't see their faces. I just know they're people. I'm standing there. And in my dream, somebody walks up behind me, taps me on the shoulder. And I turn around, and it was an angel towering over me and said, "What are you doing in man's army when you've been called to God's?"
Wow.
And I said, "If you'll make a way for me to get out of here, I'll leave." And now I'm dreaming, okay? I'm asleep. So he takes his finger, draws a door in a wall, and we walk out the door. We walk out the door, I wake up. I mean, I am just wide awake. And immediately a scripture comes to mind, which is, I think it's Isaiah 43, verses 1 and 2 and 3. And it says, "O Jacob, I have called you by name. I have redeemed you. If you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. If you walk through the water, it shall not kindle upon you." And then from there, I'm wide awake, and my ceiling in my bedroom turned into a movie screen. And I'm pinching myself. I'm like, okay, well, I'm tripping out. And I'm in this field, this huge field, and there's a face that shows up in the end of the field and begins to blow the field. And the Lord speaks to me and says, "Walk through the field." And as I walked through the field, all the wheat turned into people.
Wow.
And he says, "I'm going to place you in this field." And so next day, I'm like, God's called me in the ministry.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. And nothing from that point forward went right. Not everybody was excited as I was.
Yeah.
And so it took a while for me to finally leap into full-time ministry. I went to Bible school, didn't care for it much. I did it. And
the school part or the Bible part?
I enjoyed the Bible part. It was the school part I didn't like. When I was 21 years old, your mom and I had just got married. I was working in a chemical plant. I had the quintessential life for Brazoria County. This is what you're going to do the rest of your life.
And this was after Bible school?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was after Bible school. And so a pastor who was my childhood pastor from the age of really 10 to 16, or 9 to 16, somewhere in there, he called me and he said, "Hey, Donald, when are you going to get in the ministry?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Brother Jay. I don't know." And he said, "Well, you need to pray about it." He said, "I need a youth pastor." I said, "Okay." And I said, "I'll do that." Well, a couple of weeks later, I'm miserable. I hate the job I'm on. And it's an easy job. It's a gravy job. Make a ridiculous amount of money, but it's just... And so a couple of weeks later, I called Brother Jones's home, and he's not there. And his wife answers the phone, and she said, "Well, I'll tell him you called, Donald." And I hang up the phone. As soon as I hang up the phone rings. And it's Brother Jones. I said, "Hey, Brother Jay." I said, "I was just trying to..." He said, "You trying to get a hold of me?" I said, "Yeah, I just talked to Sister Jay." I said, she must have got a hold of you quick." He goes, "No, the Lord told me to call you." I said, "Well, yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of you." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to be there to pick you up in 2 weeks. Pack all your stuff. You're getting in the ministry."
All right.
And so John and I both quit good jobs. The salary was, "We'll pay your apartment lease,
Okay.
and your electricity and your water, but you're going to have to find a job to support anything else to eat." And so the apartment lease with water and everything was $204 a month.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? And so, but God just blessed. I mean, it was for me, it was phenomenal, because I was fulfilling what God called me to do, and I was getting to do it with someone who was willing to invest in my life and pour into me and mentor me and coach me and love me through, good days, bad days, good decisions, bad decisions.
Yeah.
Because Brother Jones is really like a second dad to me. Yeah. And so, or what we would call in some worlds, really a spiritual father to me. And not just a pastor I went to work for, but a spiritual father that would invest and pour in. And, he never really let us do without, if I let him know I had a need. Too much pride, too often.
To let people know.
I wouldn't let them know. I still don't.
Can't let them find out.
Yeah.
Can't let them know.
I'm trusting God. And
Don't look hungry. Come on, you'll be all right.
Don't look hungry. Just call it fasting.
Yeah.
And so... but that was kind of the leap into ministry. And it was crazy because, like I said, I was 17. I was diagnosed with an incurable disease. And so I was sick a lot.
Yeah.
And your mom we were told when we were dating that she would never have children, ever. It would be impossible for her ever have kids.
Who said that?
And
what an idiot. So wrong.
So when we took this leap to go leave great jobs, leave security, leave insurance, leave all that stuff, we're there, and we're not there but a few weeks to find out, oh, crud, she's pregnant. How did this, not supposed to happen. But man, God is so good. She got a job at Humana Women's Hospital in the radiology department. And they picked her up and covered everything.
Wow.
They covered, Trey being pregnant. I mean, just the whole 9 yards, man. The pregnancy, all of it, picked me up with my pre-existing condition.
Wow.
Of
crazy.
Of Crohn's disease, and so it was the hand of God.
Yeah.
That really just moved in our life. In an incredible way.
That's amazing.
And there were a lot of bumps and bruises that I will just call learning curves along the way, as there always are. But when you look back, you typically remember the great things, not the difficult.
Yeah.
You see where God came through. And so I'd been with Brother Jay about 2 years, and when we went there, they had a very small little youth group. We grew it to about 75, 80 kids pretty fast, really fast. And I did it all wrong. I did everything wrong. And and I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. But Brother Jay came in, I called me into his office one day, and he just told me, he said, Donald, there's greater in you than here. Mm. And I know of 2 places in Dallas, in the Metroplex, they're looking for a youth pastor. And I've made arrangements for you to talk to him.
Wow. He
said, because God's hands on your life are something bigger than where you're at. And most guys can't do that.
Oh, no.
You know, they're only looking out for their kingdom, their well-being, their church, their pastorate, their reputation, their ministry. He didn't do that. He was looking forward to my destiny, my call. And so, man, through that, I ended up going to Dallas. I went to actually Mesquite, and I was at a church called North Mesquite Assembly. And the reason I say I did Pleasanton, the youth ministry, wrong is I built it all on my personality, my giftings, my charisma. And so, you know, heyday, 75, 80 kids, when I leave, they plummet back down to 30. And I just made a vow to myself and the Lord, and I educated myself through John Maxwell that I will never do that again, ever. I will invest in leaders. When I leave, I want it to go up, not down. If it goes down, I failed.
Yeah.
And so the cool thing is when I left Dallas 4 years later, I left some of my student leaders in charge, of which any of them could have pastored it. They could have taken it over. And it grew in my absence.
That's amazing.
And it gave the pastor almost he took a year to find my replacement. Because of the team, I left him because he could.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge measure of success for me. You know, not necessarily that it grew in my absence, but it did. It grew in my absence. Yeah. And so I felt like that to be a more biblical, healthy model. And so,
yeah, that's amazing.
When I was in Mesquite, some great things happened, some challenges happened. You were born there.
Yeah, Dallas.
In Dallas. And so, and then you were born on July 1st. Mm-hmm. And on July 4th, I was in the emergency room having massive surgery.
Yep.
And so, where they removed a big section of my intestines. And anyway, that was a huge ordeal that was crazy. You know, it was a whirlwind back then. And but God saw us through, and you know, just his goodness.
Yeah.
And so it was really good.
That's awesome. I love which in my mind I see this going crazy. It might not have been, but the moment where Brother Jones called you and was like, "Hey, 2 weeks, pack everything up, we're going." What was the conversation like with Mom after you hung up that phone?
Terrible. No, yeah, actually, it was great. Your mom's always been an adventurer. Let's go for it. Let's go for an adventure. Let's go for it. You know, whenever I married your mom, leading up and our whole dating, she knew there was a call of God on her life too. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just a call of God on my life. I think in ministry especially, I can tell you this, as an entrepreneur and as someone in full-time ministry, both spouses have got to be all in.
Yeah. Because
it's not just a job. You know, in both incidents, you're going to take risks that nobody else understands. Mm. You're going to leave safety that nobody else gets. In every move we ever made, we took less money to go there. Always have. I'm praying I won't move again. I don't want to go down again.
Don't move me.
Yeah. And so, because that wasn't the driving factor was the call of God. What did God say? You know, because if he leads, you know, where he leads you to, he'll provide for you.
Yeah.
If you go there, you're going to have to provide yourself. And so that was kind of the way we looked at it. And so your mom was great. It was really good because she knew that I knew and trusted Brother and Sister Jones.
Yeah.
You know. Now, it was tough because I was at Brother Jay's beck and call 24/7, and she's, you know, pregnant, has a new baby. neither one of us have ever been, per se, in full-time ministry. I had done, I was made CA, Christ Ambassadors. That's what they used to call it.
Okay.
I was made CA director in our church when I was 17.
Let's go.
And my pastor, Brother Abate, I'd go to his house on Thursday nights. He'd teach me a lesson that I would teach to the students, 10 of them, on Sunday night. And that thing grew like a wildfire. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. You need to find somebody else. What do I do? He said, be at my house Thursday night. I'll give you a lesson. And that's kind of what we did.
That's awesome.
And so I really started, full-time ministry, because there's no such thing as part-time. That's a joke. But I started when I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
I would get invited to go preach at different youth events, revivals. I preached my first full-blown revival when I was 18.
Wow.
And so, anyways, it was just super cool watching, the hand of God on our lives. When I left Dallas, the Metroplex area, I went to a little community outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Sapulpa, and we served there for quite a few years. The pastors that we served there, I loved Pastor Scott. He was amazing, great guy. The church was tough. The church was very, very tough. For a while there, they had a little mantra that they didn't like the pastor, and they really didn't like me. And so
that was their mission statement.
Yeah, and so it was tough, but it was a great growing opportunity. I learned a whole lot there, and but when I left there, I told God I was getting out of the ministry. I was done. I was finished. And but one of the cool things that happened when I was up there is in March of '96, I went and saw the doctor again, because I was getting sick again, real sick. And so, and I went and saw the doctor, and he told me, he said, Donald, you have the worst case of Crohn's disease I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I said, oh, that's not good. And I said, if you've seen one or two, I may not be that nervous, but if you've seen a bunch, I could be a little nervous. And he goes, I've seen hundreds, and yours is the worst.
Wow.
And I said, what does that mean? He said, you're going to have surgery again. It's going to leave you with a feeding tube and a colostomy bag. And so, and I put all the details of that in this book. In the meantime, what do you do when you're waiting on a miracle?
Yeah.
Because God healing me, though that was the miracle, the biggest miracle is what God did while I was waiting. Because too many people don't know how to wait well.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to learn while they're waiting and grow while they're waiting. And so that's why I wrote the book more than anything else. And you can get it on Amazon or here any way possible. But went home, and I asked the doctor before I left, I said, what happens if I don't get this surgery? He said, you'll never see your 30th birthday.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And so I went home, and your mom and I, she wanted to talk about everything. I didn't want to talk about it at all, And so you guys were little, and I'm in my room. I'm in the living room watching, headed to the clicker to ESPN to see who made March Madness, because it was in March.
Yeah.
I want to see.
And this is the same day you got that news?
Yeah, same day I got that news. And so, and I'm taking off to go and watch it, and I look, and I think it's the same day. It might have been the next day.
Okay.
And so I'm going through to watch the sports, and I go past all these channels, and the Holy Spirit speaks to me in a still small voice and says, go back. Now, let me back this story up a moment, okay? When I was diagnosed at 17 years old, okay, I had been in the hospital from June 7th to October 9th with them trying to find out what my problem was, and they couldn't figure it out. I had, at that time, every test known to mankind run on me. And so on October 9th, I'm in Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas. I'm laying there. I reach over into the nightstand, and there's a Gideon Bible there. And I pull it out, and I take it, and I lay it on my chest. And I'm like, God, if you're real, I got to know it. Yeah. I got to know it. And the door of my room flew open at the hospital. But nobody walked in. And so I closed my eyes real quick, because I had heard a preacher say one time, if you see God, you'll die. And I'm like, I'm dying. I just don't want to die.
I'm trying to get out of this place.
I'm not trying to take an early exit. And so, and the crazy thing happened, man. Like I said, I had the Bible on my chest like this, but all of a sudden I felt a handprint underneath it on my chest, almost like it went through the book. Yeah. I know that's crazy, but it's what happened. And God spoke to me in an audible voice and said, you're my son. You're in the palm of my hand, and everything's going to be okay. And so you expect that the next day everything's going to be okay.
Everything's going to be fine, yeah.
Or at least next week everything will be okay. Or next month everything will be okay. Or surely next year will be okay. Fast forward, it was 12 years later. Before everything was okay. And I'm laying there in 1996 watching, and I go back to TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. And back then I didn't watch a lot of Christian television, still don't, but I went back and I'm watching it, and I don't know who the guest is, but the Holy Spirit whispers to me. It's not a audible voice, it's a still small voice. And he says, my servant who comes on this program has a word for you. So I didn't know who the guest was. They had some guy singing, so I didn't know who the guest was. I'm thinking of all these people that would be cool, you know? And the person who comes back on is Dr. Oral Roberts. And he takes his big hands. His hands are that big, man. They were just like that large. And so he takes his hands, he lifts them up, and he just starts giving words of knowledge. And the first one he gave was to me. He said, there's a young man watching this program tonight that you have hurt so severely in your abdomen section that you have fallen down in grocery stores and malls, even on your girlfriend's front porch. That's how specific it was. Wow. And I knew that was me. Yeah. Because the only way to get relief when you were having a flare-up with Crohn's disease as severe as I had it back then. Nowadays, I have a ton of medications. Back then, we didn't have anything except for prednisone. I would just fall down in a fetal position and ball up and survive the pain. Yeah. And when he said that, heat rushed from my head all the way to my feet, smoking hot. And I knew God was healing me. Yeah. And when that heat rushed through me, that still small voice spoke a little bit louder and said, every prayer you prayed, I heard. Every tear you cried, I saw. But this was the night I set aside to heal you. So I got up. Your mom was putting you all to bed. I got up and went and got your mom and brought her back in the living room. I was trying to explain what was going on. She thought, okay, he's just lost it. And so, long story longer is he's giving other words. I'm not paying attention to him, Yeah. And the host says, Dr. Roberts, would you pray? And so, Corey, as goofy as it sounds, man, I got right in front of the television. I did, lifted my hands up. I'm like, if he's praying and I'm feeling this right now, yes. And so he began to pray. When he did, all that heat that was throughout my whole body rushed out of my head and up out of my feet, just and concentrated right here. Yeah. And it's hard to explain because it was so hot that it felt great, but it was so hot that it burned.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like fire. I kept telling your mom, I'm burning up, I'm on fire, I'm burning up, I'm burning up. She's like, no, you don't have a fever. You know, she think I got fever.
Right, yeah.
The nurse in her is coming out. You've
been sick.
Yeah, you've been sick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I feel fine. And so anyway, he prays, and I walk around the house for, I don't know, hour and 45 minutes in heat.
Wow.
Everywhere I went. I called your Nana, told her God just healed me. And she goes, how do you know? I tell her the whole story, you know, through tears and shouts. I said, God just healed me. I know he healed me. And so next day I had a doctor's appointment. So I go to the doctor's appointment. I go in, and they start doing all these scopes, and your mom's in the waiting room. I'm unconscious, and they come out to your mom, and they say, Miss Gibson, we believe our machine we have a faulty machine, so we need to bring another machine in and do this test again. Would that be okay with you? And your mom, she goes, is he asleep? She goes, yeah, he's still unconscious. Yeah, I don't care. It's almost like, can you keep him that way?
Yeah. Do whatever you got to do. I'm
do
fine.
what you got to do. And so he come back in and did it again, ran it again. And so that afternoon at 4 o'clock, I had a consult with him. And we were going to review the tests and everything. And so went to his office, and he put pictures up. They're colored pictures, and he put them up. And he said, Donald, he said, these pictures over here are your intestines last week. I said, yeah, it looks terrible. He goes, yeah. He said, this over here are the intestines of a healthy teenager. Well, the problem is I was 29 years old. I wasn't a teenager. So immediately when he said a healthy teenager, I'm thinking comparison.
Right.
Okay. And so
you're like, that's unfair to compare me to that.
I'm like, okay. And he said, my problem is, what happened? I said, what do you mean? He said, these are your intestines last week. These are your intestines today.
Yeah.
What happened? So I told him the whole story and how God healed me. And he looked at me and he said, if I wouldn't have seen this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. Mm. And he took out a Mont Blanc pen, which I have one, looks just like it now. And he wrote miracle on my chart. He said, if you ever have any problems, call me again.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, Doc, I hope you get right with Jesus, because I'm not going to see you again until heaven. And that's exactly what I told him. And I walked out the door, and I've not had a problem with it since. Yeah. I mean, God just completely healed me. A couple years ago, I went and had, all those things you need to do at my age, and gave that doctor my history. And he said, if you weren't missing so much of your intestines, I would never know you ever had a problem.
Wow.
If you had not had that surgery, he said, there's not a scar, there's not a polyp, there's not an indentation. There is nothing that shows that you had anything like you just described.
Man.
And so I'm, soon coming up on the 29th anniversary of being completely healed. So,
wow.
That was a good thing that happened in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so I left there and went home.
Man.
Called my brother-in-law. Yeah, I was getting out of the ministry. I was just burnt. I was tired, I got tired of fighting with people. Honestly, this is what it was.
And how long were you in the ministry at that point?
Full-time, just 9 years. If you count, when I was started at 17, from 17 to 29, so it's 12 years. And, but I was just like done.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just always other people. It was my approach to a lot of things was wrong back then. And so I called my brother-in-law, asked if I could go to work for him. And so he made me office manager of his company. And I'm like, cool, I can do that. And we get home, we move to Sweeney, and I tell your mom, First Sunday we're there, I get up, I'm like, hey, let's go to church. And she goes, I thought you said we're getting out of the ministry. I said, I'm getting out of the ministry, but I ain't going to hell. Let's go
trying to make heaven, girl. Like,
I gotta make heaven. And so we went to the largest church in our area because I didn't think anybody would know me.
Yeah.
Now walk in the door, and a girl I graduated high school with is the door greeter.
Wow.
She said, hey, you want to sit with us? And I'm thinking, the girl I knew in high school, she's going to sit on the back row.
Yeah.
They were third row people. Mm-hmm. You know, she really got saved like I did. And so go up there. The executive pastor that morning is the one speaking. Mm-hmm. He gets up, and before he ever speaks, he just says, hey, I need this couple right here to stand up. And John and I stand up, and he just said, God's not through with you. He said, I don't know you, but you told God you quit the ministry. And matter of fact, you told your wife this morning, we're going to church. I'm not going to go to hell. And I'm telling you, you're not going to do either, and you're not going to quit ministry. And so that was in late August, 1st of September of 96. By December of 96, I'm pastoring Freeport First Assembly and 7 people with the average age of 69 years old.
Let's go.
And as they say, the rest is history, man. God just began to bless that, you know.
Yeah.
Within the first 5 months, we grew to 30. I say 5 months, 3 months. We grew to 35 people. So we're the fastest growing church in the entire county, you know. And so, but yeah, that's kind of some of the journey.
Man, that's
of ministry.
Awesome. That's so cool. See, Mom knew that we couldn't just go to church.
Yeah.
She was just like, he won't let us just go. He won't. I know him. The Lord won't just let us sit.
Yeah, that's true. And we couldn't. And so, but that's just kind of the journey, you know, and God's been faithful, been through a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties over the years, but, you know, also have seen the hand of God, the blessing of God, the favor of God in amazing, amazing ways.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
man, I thought it was so cool that when you went back into the doctor that he said that you had the intestines of a teenager.
Yeah.
Because you were diagnosed as a teenager.
Yeah.
And man, it just shows the goodness of God that he didn't make you better. He restored what was taken.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, that's so beautiful.
Oh,
like,
it was crazy.
What an awesome God we serve, that even throughout your whole journey, this whole story you shared, he met you guys the whole way just with favor, even when it was tough, even when it was rough, you know, he met y'all every step.
Yeah. You know, I think the hard thing is, and I tell a lot about it in the book, those 12 years that I was sick, man, Corey, I saw a lot of miracles.
Yeah.
A lot, man. Praying for a deaf girl, and immediately her ears are open and she can hear. Mm. Prayed for a blind kid. Immediately he could see. Prayed for a 9-year-old who had juvenile diabetes, was told she'd never live past 15, and God completely healed her. Mm-hmm. Pulled 3 people straight up out of wheelchairs. God healed them.
Wow.
And I was sick the whole time. Doesn't make sense. It offends your faith.
Yeah.
And I think God wants to know, can you sow seeds? Because I say this all the time, your gifts and your fruit are not for you.
Yeah.
And so the gift on my life was for other people, regardless of the condition I was dealing with and I was being challenged with. And that will offend your mind. It will offend your faith. And, you know, someone asked me one time, they're like, what's going to happen if God doesn't heal you after he said he was going to? I said, I'm going to get to heaven and say, what happened? Thought you were going to heal me. You know, because here's reality. You know, and I think about this in a very comical way, but think about Lazarus for a minute.
Okay.
Lazarus, come forth.
Yeah.
Why? I just died. I'm going to heaven.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. I think the only people that you ought to raise from the dead are people that don't know Jesus.
Wow, yeah.
If people know Jesus, let them go to heaven.
Yeah.
I know that I'm just being facetious, but
Yeah.
God healed me, but he healed me for purpose.
Yeah.
Not just so I could be well or better.
That's right.
He healed me for purpose. And my purpose didn't change whether I was sick or whether I was well.
That's good.
He just lengthened my purpose by healing me. And so it took me a long time to figure a lot of that out, because when you're in the middle of it, you're asking all kinds of questions, I remember one night in 1993, 94, dude, it was on. It was one of those services that were just crazy. And I'm praying for people, and God is moving. That was the night I pulled 2 people out of wheelchairs. I just grabbed them and said, Jesus said, walk. And they got up and started walking. And, God was doing miracle after miracle after miracle that night. People with cancer was being healed. A lady with a heart issue was healed. It was just dumb. Whole time I was sick.
Yeah.
Whole time I was sick. Matter of fact, I remember one time one of the guys that were going with me, I said, take my hand and put it on my own head. Because you're just like, God, would you please heal me?
Yeah.
And yet I was sick, And to be just completely transparent, the last 2 years of my sickness, I stopped praying for my own healing. I didn't pray one time the last 2 years for God to heal me. I was just like, he said he would, he will. If he don't, he don't. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm just going to be busy doing what he called me to do. And so I think we allow sickness and setback to distract us from purpose too often.
For sure.
Because everyone has a setback of some shape, form, or fashion. Everyone has a story to tell. And but it should not negate your purpose.
Yeah.
And so.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think, even if we don't get healed, like you said, you'd be in heaven, be like, what happened?
Yeah.
You'd be in heaven healed.
I'd be in heaven healed.
You'd be in heaven healed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, maybe our timing's not what's most important. And like you said in your story, you were like, the Lord told you, I set this time to heal you.
Yep.
And just to think, he always had that intent.
Yeah.
He always had that moment in time to heal you. It just wasn't in your time. And I feel like that's something we'll probably never understand.
No.
Right? And so why get caught up in stuff that you can't understand?
I do, and that's why I'm like, that's why the book is so important in the subtitle, Trusting God While Waiting for Your Miracle. Because what I write in the book is all the lessons I learned while I was sick. Yeah. And it reminds me of Joseph. We see, we preach it fast. Joseph, he went from the pit to Potiphar's house, to the prison,
in a day,
to the palace. He did it overnight. It was actually anywhere from 13 to 17 years.
Yeah.
It was a journey. It was a process. But that process allowed Joseph to receive his brothers. My process allowed me to be more merciful and gracious and kind to others.
Yeah. And
so, as the old song says, I wouldn't trade nothing for my journey now. I just wish there was another road I could have went down. And so, anyway, that's just a little bit of the story, the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
I think we probably covered everything and more, which is great. I didn't mean that to sound bad.
No, that's good. That's good. And so, well, man, thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
So, and the opportunity to just share a little bit of our journey, you know, and the thing I never want to forget is God is always faithful, and that I've seen worked out and proven in our own lives. Yeah. And so, anyway. Well, hey, if you've watched this today, hopefully it encourages you a little bit. And if not, I pray that maybe you can take it away and have some conversations with some others so it can strengthen you, encourage you, and build you up. And, I'd love for you to get the book. In the meantime, You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in several other places. But I know it'll be a blessing to you, especially if you're sick or if you're going through something. One of my favorite chapters in this book is the one your mom wrote. And because it's really how to be the best caretaker when you're dealing with somebody who's chronically ill.
Wow.
And she did a marvelous job in that. And just because she's the one who really took care of me all those years that I was sick.
That's amazing.
You know, I mean, she dated me when I was sick, married me when I was sick. So anyway, but hey, take it, and I hope it encourages you, and have some conversations beyond this table.